Oh boy, disclaimer.
Hello Banterton, everyone here. A few months ago I made a video where I took a look at the first movie in the Scream franchise and tried to decipher who donned the mask whenever Ghostface appeared on screen. Unlike my previous attempt, this one was pretty well received, so I guess it's time I put my thinking cap back on again and give Scream 2 the same treatment. Scream 2 is a bit of a Marmite movie with people either loving or hating it. Those who love it enjoy it for its strong continuity with the first film, its suspense and entertaining death scenes, and for mirroring its predecessor's self-awareness. However, some people out there believe it was at this point the franchise started to become what it was parodying, with a lot of the deaths being similarly associated with the cheesy, unbelievable deaths and cliches of the 80s slasher craze. I personally do believe there are plenty of flaws with this movie myself, but that's a topic for another video. In this video I need to see if I can figure out who donned the infamous Ghostface costume in each of the scenes it appeared, deciphering who was responsible for each kill in the process. Scream 2's villains are Debbie Loomis, the mother of Scream 1 killer Billy Loomis, and Mickey Altieri, a psychotic student who makes an amazingly effective lackey. Debbie's motive is simple, old-fashioned revenge, as she wishes to avenge her son's death by killing those who she thinks is responsible. Mickey, meanwhile,
Mickey is a sick fuck who wants to get caught. I'm gonna blame the movies. This is just the beginning, a prelude to the trial. That's where the real fun is, because these days it's all about the trial. Can't you see it?
Mickey wants to get caught so he can get famous from what he believes will be a nationally televised trial after he blames the movies for his killing spree. Yeah, that's dumb. Being honest, I don't think either killer ranks as highly as Billy and Stu from Scream 1 do, but they still have their good moments and interesting quirks. But who killed who? Well, before I get into it, I just want to quickly gloss over one theory that I've seen in comments on my previous videos and circling the internet. The theory of Mickey being left-handed. Surely if Mickey is left-handed, it would make sense just to see whether the killer uses their left or right hand. To see if I could prove the theory, I rewatched all scenes with both Mickey and Debbie in them and can confirm that Mickey does use his left hand when firing his gun. Then again, we see him use his camera with his right hand, so I'm gonna guess he's ambidextrous, which still means he could use his left hand for killing. Debbie, meanwhile, is most definitely right-handed. We see her holding her pen in her right hand several times, and she uses her right hand when firing her gun. She's definitely a righty. So surely that makes my job a lot easier, right? Sadly not. I also noticed when watching the death scenes back that every scene where a knife is used to do the deed, the killer uses their left hand. This would mean that Mickey did all the killings, and I doubt that. But why would a right-handed person use their left hand? Well, it's a bit of a stretch, but I'm gonna go with the idea that Debbie is trying to throw off investigators. Forensic scientists can use their knowledge to correctly determine whether someone was stabbed by a left-handed or right-handed person. We know that Debbie was using Mickey as a fall guy, so it's not too hard to imagine she would purposefully kill using her left hand to make Mickey look like the sole killer. That's my theory anyway, which sadly debunks the left-handed theory. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. So the movie begins with Phil Stevens and his girlfriend Maureen Evans going to watch the new Stab movie, which is based off of the events that took place in the first film. I really enjoyed that concept. Whilst Phil goes for a piss, he hears a woman's voice coming from the bathroom stall next to his, and whilst getting closer to hear what's being said, he gets stabbed through the head. I never really got this death if I'm honest. How would the killer know it was Phil on the other side of the stall wall? And how would they know he was leaning against it? Now at first the evidence does point to Mrs. Loomis. Like I said, Phil hears a woman's voice and we can clearly see that there is only one Ghostface in the cubicle, so it has to be Debbie, right? Well, no. First off, I know I just debunked the left-handed rule, but I feel it does apply here. If this really is Mrs. Loomis, I doubt she would have enough strength in her non-dominant hand to shove a knife through a bathroom stall wall. Mickey, however, being ambidextrous, would have no issue using his left hand to do this. Also, without wanting to sound controversial, Debbie is a middle-aged woman who isn't exactly made of muscle, whilst Mickey has a very stocky build. I feel he would have had the strength to do this. But Banterton, you just said Phil heard a woman's voice, I hear you cry. Well, when listening really close to it, I think it sounds more like a man putting on a woman's voice. There's a slight huskiness to it, and it sounds more like Mickey putting on a woman's voice than it does Debbie just talking, so for me it's Mickey. After Phil's death, Ghostface can be seen wearing his jacket and going back into the movie theatre to sit next to Maureen, before then stabbing her to death. Well, sort of. She staggers around for about half an hour and then dies. Again, I believe Mickey to be the killer here. Phil's jacket seems to fit Ghostface perfectly, which makes sense for it being Mickey considering they were of a similar build. Mrs. Loomis would be too small for the jacket. Also, Maureen doesn't realise it's not Phil when she cuddles up to him, which wouldn't make sense if this were Debbie here. No way would Maureen mistake Debbie's build for that of Phil. So yeah, Mickey did it. Now this one was difficult. In fact, this was probably the most difficult one to decipher in the whole movie. There really wasn't a lot of strong evidence pointing towards either Mickey or Debbie here, but let's look at what we know. It's pretty obvious that both Mickey and Debbie are involved here because when Ghostface sneaks into the Omega Beta Zeta house, they aren't holding a phone, despite Cece's housemate talking to Ghostface on the phone. So one of them must have made the call whilst the other wore a costume. Both had great opportunity too. Debbie isn't seen until long after Cece's death, and Mickey is shown turning up to the party with Derek after Cece's death as well. And there's no proof to suggest that this scene took place the exact second after the previous one did. I thought I had made a breakthrough after hearing Ghostface when they attack Cece. Ghostface clearly makes several male growls and groans during the scene, pointing to it being Mickey. However, we see during Mickey's reveal that in this movie, unlike in Scream 1, the voice changer is hands-free and can be stored inside the mask, so this rules out no one either. Debbie could just as easily be making the same noises, debunking that theory. One thought I had is that Mickey is certainly strong enough to throw Cece off a balcony, whilst Debbie might find it a bit more difficult. She was defeated by foam blocks after all, but Cece isn't exactly a large victim either. Surely Debbie wouldn't have struggled that much. One theory I've heard is that the caller must be Mickey because Ghostface mentions things that only someone who knows Cece well enough would know, such as her boyfriend's name and that the Omega Beta Zeta house has an alarm. Mickey is seen to have film studies class with Cece, so these are things he could easily find out about her. But this isn't really concrete evidence because Mickey could have just easily wrote down some notes and given them to Mrs. Loomis. I thought I had struck gold when watching the scene with Dewey and Gail in the movie theatre. After they get a little bit raunchy, Ghostface plays footage that was filmed moments before several victims' deaths, Cece's included. Considering Mickey is the guy who was seen with a video camera throughout the film, I thought I had enough evidence to prove that he was outside whilst Debbie committed the murder. To prove it, I went back and watched the scene again, only to be let down by Father Time himself. From the film footage shown, we know that Cece was being filmed when she told her housemate over the phone that she was outside. I filmed how long it took between this moment and Ghostface sneaking into the house, which was 1 minute and 3 seconds. That is more than enough time for Mickey to stop filming, hide his camera and sneak into the house. Damn, back to square one again. At this point I was literally banging my head on the wall. There was enough evidence pointing to both, but none of it was concrete enough. But then I remembered that magic M word, motive. Simply put, Debbie had no motive whatsoever to kill Cece. Her goal was revenge and to harm those who she believed responsible for killing her son. Meanwhile, Mickey's stupid blame the movies motive would have benefited from Cece's death as an extra body in his twisted rampage. I'm also certain Mickey's blame from the movies motive was the reason why characters with similar names to victims of the previous were chosen. What better way to blame the movies than by staging a sick, twisted sequel of sorts to the original massacre? Also, he directly argued with Cece in his film studies class after she disagreed with him, stating movies aren't to blame and that people are responsible for their own actions, which could have motivated him to kill her further. So yeah, I think Mickey was the one who killed Cece simply because he actually had a reason to kill her, though I'll be honest, it could have easily been either of them. After the police show up to the scene of Cece's death, the party crowd all pile out of the house to see what's going on before deciding to head back to their respective dorms. Sydney goes back into the house only for the phone to ring. She picks it up, talks to Ghostface for a bit and is then attacked before Derek tries to make the save, getting his arm badly cut in the process. Thankfully this one was a lot easier to figure out. Simply put, Debbie Loomis was responsible for this attack. Mickey was last seen here in a huge crowd of people fleeing the house. I doubt he would have been able to get away and back to the house in time. Debbie meanwhile disappeared long before the attack, claiming she had a deadline approaching. Also, Debbie has more motive to attack Sydney here, after all killing her is Debbie's main goal. There is some evidence pointing towards Mickey, most notably the fact that Ghostface was able to stab the knife through the wooden door, which as I mentioned before would be very hard for Debbie to do with her non-dominant arm. However, that was in a small bathroom stall with barely any room to move. In this scene, Ghostface clearly has a good run up towards the door. Maybe this run up was enough to ensure Debbie could actually stab through the door. The biggest piece of evidence for me though is the attack on Derek. Derek gets his arm badly sliced up after chasing after Ghostface. Mickey has a similar build to Derek and probably would have been able to overpower him and stab him properly. Debbie meanwhile is much smaller and therefore may have sliced Derek's arm as a desperate attempt to escape as he overpowered her. I just think Mickey would probably have killed him there and then, whilst Debbie, who didn't really care about Derek, would have just injured him to keep him away. Mickey does do his part in this scene however, as once again the person in the costume is different to the one calling. We know this because we see Ghostface appear almost immediately after hanging up the phone, and they clearly aren't holding a phone. So in my opinion, Mickey made the call to distract Sydney and Debbie then attacked her and Derek. Next up is when Sydney gets stalked by Ghostface whilst doing a dress rehearsal of the play she is starring in. This was clearly Mickey. He was attending to the backstage area before disappearing to edit his footage, asking Derek to cover for him. Clearly he did this so he could sneak on stage to scare Sydney. It would also be a lot easier for a student to sneak onto a stage than it would be for a local reporter, so it has to be Mickey. Oh god, this scene. After Randy gets called by Ghostface, he agrees to keep the caller busy whilst Gail and Dewey go around trying to find the caller, which goes about as well as you could expect. Why the hell did they kill off Randy? I mean, credit to them, it was a ballsy move, but Randy was an important vocal point of the franchise. His wisdom of movies was the main source of self-awareness that the early movies strived in. Killing him off was a big dumb move in my opinion. But who killed him? Well, I have to say Debbie Loomis because she pretty much admitted it later in the film.
Randy spoke poorly of Billy, and I got a little knife happy.
Also, she may see Randy as one of the people responsible for Billy's death, and he was talking ill of Billy at the time of being killed, which would have fueled her to go into a murderous rampage. Later on, Sydney is seen in the college library doing work on a computer when she starts receiving threatening messages. Much like Sydney's stage fright, this has to be Mickey, as it would be a lot easier for him, a student, to log into a college computer than it would be for Mrs. Loomis. That was nice and easy, wasn't it? Meanwhile, Dewey and Gail go to the on-campus movie theatre to look back at some footage Gail's cameraman Joel filmed, but decide to fuck instead. What is this, a porno? But before they get too far though, they are distracted by footage shot by someone else, that someone else being Mickey. They are then attacked by Ghostface, with Gail being stalked throughout the sound areas before managing to escape. Dewey, however, isn't so lucky, getting severely wounded by Ghostface, though it is later revealed that he somehow survived this attack. Again. Once again, I think both Mickey and Debbie are there because there isn't enough time for Ghostface to get from the projector room to behind Gail without being seen. Clearly this Ghostface was simply a distraction so this Ghostface could attack. The Ghostface in the projector room is seen holding a video camera much like the one Mickey is seen with throughout the film, so it's safe to say that this Ghostface is Mickey, meaning the Ghostface that stalked and attacked both Gail and Dewey is Debbie. This makes sense because much like Sydney and Randy, Gail and Dewey could be seen as people responsible for Billy's death in Debbie's eyes, so her rage and revenge would definitely be directed towards them. After Sydney has been attacked and targeted enough times, the police decide to move her out of town to keep her safe, with officers Andrews and Richards driving her and Haley out of town, only for Ghostface to put a stop to it. First he cuts Andrews' throat, killing him, and then proceeds to kick the shit out of Richards and then hijacks the car with Sydney and Haley in it before driving into Officer Richards, driving him around on the car bonnet. This leads to perhaps the most gruesome death of the entire franchise as Ghostface crashes the car into a scaffolding van, causing Richards' head to be impaled by a metal pole. Ouch. Ghostface inadvertently knocks himself out though, allowing both Haley and Sydney to escape. Sadly though, Sydney decides to go back and unmask Ghostface, giving them enough time to recover and attack Haley, killing her. Now I could go on with the minute details about how Debbie wouldn't dare take on two armed cops alone and that she would have had no motive to kill Haley, but there's actually a much bigger piece of evidence proving that it was Mickey behind these deaths. Later when he reveals himself to be one of the killers, we can see a huge injury on his forehead, meaning he had to be in the car crash, thus making him the Ghostface in this scene. This one's obvious, but I have to include it because one of the killers actually committed the murder. After escaping, Sydney flees to her college drama theatre where she finds Derek half naked and tied up to a stage prop after his pledge brothers hazed him due to him giving Sydney his pledge necklace. Whilst trying to free him, Ghostface turns up and reveals himself to be Mickey. Mickey then plays mind games with Sydney, trying to convince her that Derek is his partner in crime before coldly shooting him to death in front of her. Of course Mickey is the killer, as we literally see him doing it. So that's my rundown on who killed who in Scream 2. From my logic, I believe that Mickey killed Phil, Maureen, Cece, Haley, Officer Andrews, Officer Richards, and Derek, giving him a grand total of 7, yes, 7 kills. On the flip side of that leaves Debbie Loomis with a mere 1 kill to her name, Randy. However, that doesn't mean she's a bad villain. I see Mrs. Loomis as a sort of criminal mastermind, happily funding Mickey's rampage while setting up all the situations that happen in the film. She's definitely the brains of the duo, using Mickey as the muscle and letting him do most of the dirty work, only letting her hands get dirty when the kills are more personal. And being honest, I'm not sure which is creepier, the psychopath who wants to kill people and get fame from it, or the person in charge of said psychopath, knowing he will do pretty much anything she says. Either way, both killers have their respective merits and cool moments in the film. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Do you agree with my conclusions? How do you think it went down? Let me know in the comments below. I've been Banderson, and I'll see you soon.